Could you give yourself a brief introduction to who you are and what you do at ChainSafe?
In the crypto space for 8 years, been a dev myself, did a lot of developer advocacy, joined ChainSafe in 2021 to lead the Forest project. Today we are at 11 members total, basically the Rust client for the Filecoin network.
I know Juan Benet and the gang at Protocol Labs have an ambitious roadmap to complete. Store the world's data. Filecoin has become basically the de facto top storage protocol, fulfilling quite an important mission. In brief, what role the Forest team plays in the Filecoin ecosystem?
Forest. So in the Filecoin network, you have like three main implementations right now. One is Lotus, which is the reference implementation maintained by Protocol Labs. Then you have Venus, which is maintained by the IPFS Force community. And then you have Forest. So both the Lotus and Venus implementations are in Go. Forest is the only quote unquote alternative language implementation in Rust. So one of the main core things that we do basically help decentralize the network and help maintain resiliency. So in case there's a bug in the Golang itself, can take down all the nodes, and that's where Forest comes into play. Some of the key things that we have been doing, having Forest become a consensus node. Before this year, Lotus was the only one who could generate these snapshots, which is basically the most up-to-date ledger of the Filecoin network. But in recent times, Forest are also able to do that now, further decentralize the network. If something happens to the Lotus nodes, you can rely on the Forest snapshots for getting connectivity back into the network as a node provider.
As I understand, about 98% of the network is running on Lotus. So what's like the target goal of like Forest to try to get to in terms of nodes on the network?
Not sure if it's exactly 98%, but definitely well over 90% of the network is run by Lotus, and then there's some good percentage by Venus. So it's more about the use case rather than the target percentage network. So if you look at Lotus right now, Lotus is very heavy on infrastructure cost, 128 GB of memory, 100 GB disk space available for you to run. The cost for that is really high, especially if you're, for example, if you don't want to mine in the Filecoin network and you want to be a chain data provider or just be a provider of historical information to the node operators. That's where Forest kind of comes in because it's very light on the infrastructure. You need at the most 8 GB of memory to run a Forest node to generate download snapshots. Also, we are working on a specific set of feature where instead of 100 GB disk space, you can work with just 50 GB disk space. Almost anybody with a personal computer with a decent amount of memory and storage would be able to run a Forest node. So that's really big in democratization of the Filecoin network. And also we focus a lot on strong user and UX experience. So for example, you can switch between calibration net and mainnet very easily through the CLI. You can download, run Forest with just a few lines of code using Docker or directly from the binaries. And I think it's crucial for the network to have a node where anybody with just a little hardware can run it. And hopefully that gains more and more node share of the network. Something we have discovered is that people generally use Lotus to do the heavy duty stuff, which is being a storage provider or a node operator with mining. This is something we have seen in Ethereum, and this is the second biggest use case. Ethereum is to be a chain provider. So what that means is that you either run archival nodes or you provide the historical data of the chain. So miners or different node operators are looking to get access to miner rewards or penalties or any other information that has the full chain has. Currently, because of the heaviness of the chain, all the nodes only provide the latest information about the chain from the latest network upgrade. So what Forest wants to do going forward is maintain the archival chains to see the entire history of the chain. Perhaps, developers or different people can do fun things with it. That's basically where our use case kind of comes in.
What's next on the roadmap in the coming 6 months to a year for the Forest team?
Improving performance, reliability, node monitoring, making sure all the other functionalities kind of work in the Forest CLI and the node itself. For more information, you can always look into our GitHub repo, and our roadmap is open source.
Go ahead and plug anything about yourself and Forest at this point.
We are currently running a survey for node operators who would like to have a full chain snapshot. Would love your input on what use cases you're using it for, whether you want to run an archival node or how much difficulty you're having with other implementations. Would love your feedback, and always reach out the Forest team in Filecoin Slack or ChainSafe Discord, or reach out to me at lee@chainsafe.io, and we'll be happy to have your input.
Nice. And do you want people running Forest?
Yes, absolutely. We want them to download Snapshot using Forest, open some issues on GitHubs, have some discussions, and please let us know what use cases you would find valuable.